what we're going to do today is walk you through the setup of your Crunch-free account. So we'll give you some pointers on where to begin, how to do that, and we'll also give you some tips along the way as well, so that you're getting the absolute most out of your account from as soon as possible. So let's just jump straight in. So the idea of this class today is how to master your accounting software. So as I briefly mentioned, we'll go through the basic setups and we'll provide hints and tips. So quick introduction, my name's Luke Young. I'm one of the client education specialists here at Crunch. I'm part of the client experience team, and alongside me is a good friend of mine, Katie. She's also on our team as well. I sort of help create media content, so walkthrough series, videos, etc. So if you get the opportunity to after this, do have a look at those. And I'll quickly pass over to Katie to help you understand her role in the CX team as well.
Hello. Yeah, well, very similar to Luke, obviously helping with content. We're putting together the Help Center articles that hopefully you'll be having a look at to help guide you through any questions you have while you're using your account, as well as content for our other packages as well. So we have a lot of internal emails that we use, new initiatives for new ways that we can help make content more engaging for yourselves. Yeah, it's kind of the main aspects of our role, really, I guess.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Yeah, it's we're very focused towards making your lives easier, so we want to provide you with content that's simple to follow, easy to read if that's what you prefer as well. So at the end of this, we'll provide you with some links for resource centers and stuff as well, so do stick around for that. And I also just want to let you know that we will be sending this out to all the attendees as well, so you'll get a recording of it, so you've got a point of reference at the end as well. So let's give you a quick rundown of what exactly we're going to go through. I know that it got highlighted in the email, but it's worth just a quick summary so you know exactly what you're getting. So Katie, do you want to walk us through what we're going to have a look at?
Sure, yeah. So today we're going to be having a look at setting up your account. So that is setting up your business details, making sure your contact details are correct, how you can change those, uploading your business logo so you can personalize your invoices going out to your clients. And we'll just look at the general settings area around there to give you a feel for that, as well as any add-ons as well. We'll have a look at the banking section as well to show you how to set up your bank accounts, your credit cards, how to make the most of open banking if that's relevant to the bank that you're with. Creating new suppliers and recording expenses, really important to make sure you're able to get as much tax relief as possible. We'll be showing you some quick wins in regards to that as well. So how to use some of our add-ons like Snap for capturing your receipts on the go, recurring expenses, which you can set up in your account, things like Trip Capture, and got anything else? I think that's it mainly for our quick wins there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll also talk you through a little bit about setting up your clients and sending out invoices. So really important to be able to see how much you're actually earning each month on month. We'll cover a quick introduction to bank reconciliation as well, just to show you what that actually means and why it's important for matching up your Crunch entries with your statement entries. And we'll just show you a little bit about where our help center is and what you can find in there.
Perfect. Thanks, Katie.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's worth noting as well that you should be able to ask questions as we go through, so don't hesitate. I'll try and answer them as you ask them, just so that it's relevant to the sections that we're on. Or if you have got questions that you'd rather we answer towards the end, then that's absolutely fine. It's totally up to you, but don't be shy. Feel free to ask whatever it is that you want to ask. So with all that being said, let's just crack on and actually jump straight in to our accounts. So this here is a brand new account. So when you initially signed up for Crunch-free, again, this is for half of you that have and half of you that haven't, you'll have been given your login details, And at this stage, once you've logged in, this is exactly what you'll see. Okay, so this is brand spanking new. So what you're currently looking at here is, I guess it's a dashboard of sorts. So it's just a general idea of where to go, where to start. So as we can see here, you've almost got like an order of things. So add your bank account, upload your logo, add your first client, etc. Now, the thing that I would probably recommend doing first, out of all of this, is actually making sure that your business details are correct in your account, and that's things like your business name, your logo, and things like that. Because when you start to use some of the features in the software, those do get pulled onto relevant sections like invoices, for example. So of course you want to make sure your business name's correct on that. You want to make sure that your logo is presented correctly on that as well if you want one. So in order to do that, all you need to do is go to the top right hand corner over here. You've got this little icon and drop down menu, and select it and just go to your settings. So this is your account settings. So once you've gone here, as you can see, you've got the opportunity then to change business name if you needed to at some point. You can also change your registered address, your business address. This one here in particular, always make sure that this is as up to date as it possibly can be, because as I mentioned, this will be shown on your invoices. So if you move address at any point, just make sure you jump into your account when you can, once you've done shifting boxes and everything, and then update this. Otherwise, you'll be sending out details that aren't correct. If you're VAT registered, that will also show here as well alongside the VAT number. So again, that will also be included on the invoice. And then if you ever wanted to upload your business logo, you do that via this option here. Now, business logos, you have to make sure that they are only 200k in size. There isn't really a restriction on the dimensions per se, because it will kind of squash it down a little bit. But of course, the larger the image, the bigger the file size. So, try and keep it as small as you possibly can so that you're able to upload it successfully. And then once you do that, you'll be presented with a preview of what the logo will look like and eventually appear on your invoice as well. The other thing worth mentioning as well is, now this is kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but it's worth pointing out while I'm here. So once you've updated all your records and you've got your expenses in, your sales invoices in, and you've done bank rec and all this kind of stuff to keep your accounting records up to date, at some point you will need to export that data to either give it to someone else to manage, to do your year-end accounts, or if you ever wanted to come on board with Crunch, then we can also use that data to help you prepare accounts as well. So if you need that, you can just go here, export your Crunch data, and then it will give you a list of items that you can export. You can either do the entire lot, or you can do specific items if you only need to as well. So again, skipping ahead slightly, but worth mentioning while we're on that particular section.
Worth just mentioning that exports as an XLS file, but if you've got uploads, so if you've attached like JPEGs to your expenses, then they should also come out as part of the download as well. So you will have everything recorded in that export.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Yeah, so none of your data gets missed. Whatever it is that you're putting into this account, it comes out with the export as well. So yeah, that's a very, very good point. So I think that's probably more or less it for the settings page itself. I don't want to chew your ears off too much about that, but yeah, it's just worth knowing that that's there. So let's jump back. I'm going to go back to the home page. Now, I'll give you an overview and a rundown of what you're exactly looking at. So this bit here is just a simple welcome message. It's dynamic. So as you update your account and you add different pieces of data, this will also change. So it'll eventually start giving you sort of tips, related to, the expenses you can claim, things like that. This section here also is dynamic, so this will change just to give you some idea of what add-ons you can have. So like Katie mentioned earlier, things like Snap for your expenses. So that's worth keeping an eye out on, because there might be something that you do want to take advantage of. So moving on to the general setup of the account. So as we can see, as I mentioned, we've got this list. almost chronological order, but on both occasions, the very first thing you want to do is set up your bank accounts, and that's whether it's a current saving or even a credit card account as well. Now, if I click on any one of these, it's just going to take me to a form where I need to enter some real basic information. So let's say, you know, display name, you can make it as simple or as complex as you want. This is just a way of you identifying the bank account. So if you have more than one, you want to make sure that you're able to easily differentiate between which accounts are which. So let's just say, for the sake of ease, I'm going to go with just calling this one current. And then if I were to create another bank account, let's say it's another current account, you can perhaps name that something like the actual provider, and you can continue in that fashion. It's entirely up to you. It's no more complicated than that. You've got the actual bank provider. Again, it's just another way of identifying who it is. So let's go with that, and I'll remove that from there. Now, the opening balance, this I have to say is super important, because this is the very first transaction of your company's accounting period in the year that you join Crunch Free. So as we can see here, my account says it's the 7th of October, and that's because when I signed up to Crunch Free, the company's house info has actually been pulled down into my account for me. So this is the very first date of my accounting period. So I'd need to look at my bank statement, look at the very first transaction on that date, and enter that as the opening balance. Now, there's kind of two scenarios here, because if you're a brand new company and you've just got a brand new bank account and there's no transactions at all on that date, chances are it's going to be zero, at which point you can just carry on. If your company has existed for a year prior or more before, you will need to enter an opening balance. So just have a look at the amount on the first date of this particular date. This will be different for you, of course, depending on your company year. All right. I think that's more or less it for the opening balance. Katie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered it well there. I mean, we do have a supporting help article about opening balances if you want to read a bit more about that as well, just whilst you're actually going through it yourselves. But yeah, I mean, just check your statement, check your online banking for the last statement entry, pop it in there, and you're good to go. You're ready.
Yeah. And the reason that you have to do this, especially if you've got a previous accounting year, is your bookkeeping has to tally up. It has to tally up and match balances exactly. Otherwise, you risk missing out on certain transactions, which could either be or should be giving you, if it's an expense, corporation tax relief. It just means that your year end won't be correct. And actually, a lot of accountants won't produce a set of accounts, even if there's a single penny that's out of alignment. So just be really careful, because I can tell you from experience, there's nothing more frustrating than having to go back 6 months because I've forgotten to include a penny in my account. So don't be like me. Just make sure that you're entering in the correct info and the correct opening balance. The next couple of fields are quite self-explanatory, in all honesty. You just need to verify with us that it is a business bank account. Of course, for limited companies, it's super important that you're only using business bank accounts for your company. You should not be using personal bank accounts at all. So, there's lots of banks that will offer you different business bank accounts. I think we've actually got partnership with a couple of them as well. So which ones is it, Katie? Is it Barclays, Tide?
We've got Barclays, Metro Bank, and Tide, I believe, are the three that we're working with at the moment.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So yeah,
I think
of course,
probably good just to clarify there as well, when we say a business bank account, even if it's a personal account that you use solely for business, that still counts as a personal account. It has to actually be in the name of your company to be classed as a business bank account.
Yeah, that's some good clarification. Yeah, so it has to be an account that you have organized with the bank under the name of using your company's name. It cannot be your personal name. So yeah, just make sure, if you haven't already got that sorted, you look into that as soon as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and check that box. You've also then just got to verify it is a pound sterling account. Unfortunately, you can't put foreign bank accounts into Crunch Free, so just be sure you're only entering a pound sterling one, and go ahead and click that box there. Now, sort code and account number, while I could just whiz through this because we all know what sort codes and account numbers are, I do want to highlight that it's very, very important to make sure you're entering the correct sort code and account number. There's two reasons for this. The main one being is that when you raise your invoices, these are the details that are going to be attached to that invoice. Obviously, you don't want your payment going to someone else's account, so that's the main big one. Secondly, is what Katie mentioned earlier was about open banking. Now, the reason it's important for open banking is that your Crunch Free account will actually recognize sort codes that have an open banking integration available. So once you've keyed this in, I'll quickly do it now. Now, I'm going to totally make one up, by the way, so I'm going against exactly what I've just said, but just make sure you're putting the right ones in and entering the correct details. So I'm going to go ahead and save that now. So again, make sure you've put the sort code in, the account number in correctly. I'll go ahead and save this. Now what it's done is brought me back to, I guess it's another dashboard. I'm going to refer to a lot of this stuff as dashboard. So this has taken you to the banking, accounts and cards section. Now here you've got what I guess I could refer to as a card. So this is one of my banking cards. Okay, so as we can see, it's got the display name, it's got the sort code, the account number, it's got the balance that I'd set up as well. And we can also see a couple of additional features, which I'll touch on a bit later. Now, swinging back to the open banking, you'll see that you've got this icon here. So it tells me, yeah, there's a free feed available for you. Now, I can't recommend this strongly enough. If you do see this icon and it does say that a free feed is available, absolutely go through with it, because open banking seamlessly integrates your online bank to your Crunch Free software. And I think is it every 2 weeks or is it every month?
I think it varies from bank to bank, actually, in terms of how frequent the uploads are. Usually it'll be at least every sort of 2 weeks, sometimes more frequently, depending on who you're with.
Yeah, and you know, to have it's one less job for you, in short, right? So what will happen is your bank statements in a CSV file format will just start being fed into your Crunch Free software, and that'll set you up really, really nicely when you come to complete bank reconciliation, which again we'll touch on a little bit towards the end. But again, you know, if it's there, do it. It's completely free. All you need to do is go through a little bit of a step-by-step process, you know, by syncing the two together. But then you will not believe how much time you will save by doing that. I guess the alternative I may as well mention, if you don't have this available, will be to download statements manually from your online bank account. Now it's not overly painful, don't get me wrong, you know, it does require a bit more work than's probably needed, sure. But if that is the case and you do have to manually download it, we're not going to leave you in the dark at all. You know, we've got the help center as well, so that you can jump on there and there's a complete step-by-step guide on sort of downloading it, formatting it, and then getting it uploaded. And there's also a really handy video on there as well about it if you prefer to watch the actual process happening. Let's go ahead then and quickly create another one, just so that you're aware of how you do this now, because beforehand we used the quick link. Okay, so that just took us straight there and we were straight onto the form. If you need to add another account though, you can just go to banking, accounts and cards, and then in the bottom right corner, you've got this little icon down here. So select this and you've got two options, new bank account or a new credit card. So let's go ahead with the credit card this time, just to show you something different. And this time you actually need a little bit less info as well. So the name is what we mentioned earlier. It's just the display name to help you differentiate it from others if you've got more than one. So I'll put that in there. Last four, simple enough. And again, we've got the same opening balance question again. So I won't re-go over that because I think I talked about it enough. But again, just make sure that you've got the correct opening balance. And then the final two verification check boxes, the same as last time. Go ahead and save that. And there you go. You've now added another card to your stack in the dashboard. And you'll notice that these are separated as well to make it easier to identify one for the other. That's probably it when it comes to banking and setting up your bank accounts. Katie, have I missed anything?
No, I think just to mention quickly on open banking again, unfortunately it's not available currently for credit cards, but you can do it for current accounts. Also, if you do set it up, you will just be asked to re-authenticate it. I think that's every 90 days,
90.
either
Yeah.
60 or 90. I think it's 90, which just means that you'll need to go through the steps again just to confirm you want to continue with it uploading into your account, which is just a security measure to make sure that you still want that to be going ahead.
Yeah,
That's it.
that's a good point. Nice one. Thank you, mate. Okay. So once you've got your one account or a couple of accounts all set up, and that's what I would call the foundation. Make sure that you've got all bank accounts related to the limited company included before you proceed any further. Afterwards, again, depending on, I guess, whether you're, I mean, in fact, actually, it doesn't really depend that much, because if you're a new limited company or you've existed for some time, you're going to have expenses that you need to include in the accounts, and that's always a good starting point. You want to make sure that you're able to claim back the correct tax relief and that you're including everything that you're spending business money on. So for brand new companies, that's likely to be things like startup costs. So whether that's sort of website creation, graphics designs, equipment costs as well. So if you bought, especially at the moment, if you're buying yourself things like computers and home office equipment, absolutely you're able to claim for that for the sake of the business. And for pre-existing companies, the chances are you might have a little bit of backdating to do, so you're playing a bit of catch up. So in order for you to start creating your expenses, if you go to expenses in the menu over here on the left, and then go to suppliers, you've got to have a supplier set up, and these are businesses or services that you're spending money on. So that could be an individual if you're buying things from people, but it's likely to be businesses that you're buying items from, like equipment from Amazon and stuff like that. So to create a new supplier, go to the bottom right hand corner, and this is it, name and the expense type. So the name is, well, who is it that you're buying the item from? So let's stick with Amazon.
And you
And
can
then
also use quite generic names for your suppliers as well. So if you were going out for lunches while you're working, you might want to just have one for lunch rather than every single cafe you go to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I mean, for quite bespoke expenses, especially things like equipment, sure, put in the place that you're actually buying the item from. But like Katie said, for your regular everyday expenses that you're just going to be spending money on every day regardless, use a generic one. So you could just create a supplier called food, and then all of your expenses for food just go under this one supplier. And likewise with public travel as well. So if you get buses, trains, taxis, whatever it might be, you could just create a supplier called public transport and then list all of your travel items under there. I tell you what, let's stick with public transport then, because we've got it in now. The default expense type, while it says optional, if you can, try and select one, especially if it is for your regular expenses. So this means that when you create a new expense and you pick public transport as the supplier, it's going to automatically select the expense type for you. So, it's not going to save you hours, don't get me wrong, but it certainly helps speed up things a little bit when you're creating your expenses. So I'll select public transport there. I'll go ahead and save it. And now this has been added to our list of suppliers. So my recommendation before you start then creating expenses is set all of these up first. So have a think about where you're buying items, what it is that you spend money on. So public transport, food, equipment, things like that. Get all of these suppliers listed in your account first, and then go in to start creating the expenses for them. Again, it's not going to save you hours, but at least if they're there simply just to select, you've saved yourself a little bit of time at the very least. Now, when it comes to creating the expense itself, just jump into the expenses section. So we see it's there if it's your first one, you'll see this, create an expense. If you've created some before this session though, go down to the bottom right. It doesn't really matter. Once you create the first expense, this will disappear anyway. So I'm going to go to the bottom right, press this icon down here. Now you've just got to enter some really basic info about the expenses. So as I mentioned earlier, you've got your suppliers list from this drop down menu. Here's the transport one I set up just a moment ago. All I've then got to do is start entering the details of the expense item. So when did you pay for it? You'll notice it doesn't let me go in the future, of course, because you're only going to pay for expenses simultaneously on the same day. So you can go backwards if you need to backdate. So go back as far as you like if you are sort of catching up. I'm going to put in today's date. You can also attach files. So if you've got photos of your receipts, pop those in there, that's fine. You can just drag and drop them from your desktop. You can also add a note as well. So if, let's say, while we're using a generic supplier, if I want to make my journey a bit more distinguished, I could perhaps put where I was traveling to into this box here. You can also make expenses chargeable or rechargeable to a client. So if you're working with somebody that has offered to pay for your travel, if you tick this, if you select this option here, you'll then be able to pick that client that you're working with from a list, and then that will go alongside an invoice to them when you issue it to them. I'll tell you what, I'll quickly attach this one now, just so that when we hit the invoices part, we can see exactly what happens. And then lastly, adding a reference it's more or less the same as this one. It just gives you further means of distinguishing something if you wanted to, but obviously all of this is optional. You don't really have to do it if you don't want. The one thing I guess that I would say is the important thing is to make sure you're keeping a copy of your receipts, even if you don't want to upload them into your account. Make sure you keep the paper version at the very least, or an image on your phone stored somewhere. Next up, we've got the description. So what is the expense that you're paying for? So keep it nice and simple as a travel card. You'll see, as I said earlier, the expense type's automatically set because of the way I set up the supplier a moment ago. It's not locked though, so if you wanted to change it, you absolutely can. It's not set in stone. Sorry, excuse me. And then you've also got a VAT rate. Now, one really smart thing about Crunch-Free is that it will know whether VAT is applicable to specific expenses. So you'll see here, this is set at 0 rate. I've done nothing for that. If I were to change the expense type to another where VAT is applicable, so if I changed it to general insurance, well, eat my own words, it hasn't actually changed to general insurance because apparently there is no VAT on general insurance.
Equipment cost, that's a good one. That normally has
equipment. Yeah, that's a good shout.
Yeah, equipment normally has VAT on it. There we go.
Saved by the software. It's fine. So yeah, equipment cost has now changed to standard, and this will do this for all of the expense types that you choose. So as we saw again just a moment ago by my slight error, it still stayed at 0 because it knows that there isn't any VAT on that. If I change it again, especially now, because there's reduced rates for VAT, you'll also be prompted about that as well. So that's worth keeping an eye on. And then you can select the different type of VAT that's been applied to that sort of expense as well. It also does things like if you're working for charities and things like that, it will know. And also if you have a foreign expense where there is no UK VAT applicable, it will actually deem it as outside of scope. So again, just let the system do the work for you where it can, and save yourself a little bit of time. At least you don't have to sit down with your receipt then and trying to work out does it, doesn't it? But I'm going to change this one back to public transport again. Now the amount, this is the total amount. So if there is VAT applicable, don't worry about dividing it and putting the amount minus the VAT, just put in the total amount. So let's say, I don't really know how much is a travel card. They're quite expensive, aren't they?
They are very expensive.
They are quite expensive, yeah. I think the last one I paid for was about 120 something pound for a month. I'm just
Probably
going to go
sounds
with
about
that.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. So yeah, put the total amount in here, and you'll see that you actually get a sort of summary, if you will. So 121 total, and there's no VAT applied. If, however, I were to change it to something else that does have VAT applied, let's go back to equipment cost, you'll see that the system has split the VAT element for me. It's very, very intuitive in that respect. So let the system do the work for you. So I'm going to change that back, and now it's changed back again. Payment, simple enough. When did you pay for it? As mentioned, most of the time you're going to have the payment come out simultaneously when you buy it. We're aware sometimes that there can be delays on payments, maybe a day or two. So just if that's the case, I would probably suggest just waiting before creating the expense until the money's actually gone out of the account, so that you can marry these two up nicely. If, however, let's say you did purchase it on the 29th, but the money didn't come out until, you know, the first today, you can still do that if you really want to. If you want to make it an exact reflection, that's fine. But the important thing is just making sure that you've got the payment date correct, because that's what will show up on your bank statement, and that's what you need to use when you're updating your records with bank reconciliation. Payment methods, you've got a couple of things to choose from here. You can either do it out of the business account, you can select your credit card account if you've got one, and you can also specify whether you've actually used your own personal account as well. You know, as a limited company director, yes, you should always have a business bank account, and that's for your business to business transactions, you know, for your invoices and sales and things. But we are aware every now and then the chances are you might have left your business card at home or whatever, and your only option is to use your own personal. So that is there if that is the case. I'm going to leave this one as transfer out of business account though. So I'm happy with this. I can go ahead and press save, or if you are doing almost like a batch of similar expenses, if you've got a bunch of travel cards that you need to include, press save and add similar, and it will just jump you straight back to this form for you to carry on adding new expenses again. So I'm going to go ahead and press save, and there's your expense now created. I won't set one up now, but it's worth pointing out recurring expenses. So recurring expenses allow you to automate processes. So for things like direct debits, standing orders, where it's the same date, the same amount every single month or week, automate them. There's no point having to go through a manual process every single time. I mean, I'll show you actually. It really doesn't take long, so let's just go ahead and do it. So bottom right corner, as is tradition, pick your supplier. So again, if you are buying a monthly travel card that is the same cost, you don't have to do it every single time you buy one. You could just repeat it. Do you want it to repeat once? If so, how often? Days, weeks, months. So I'll leave it as once a month. I'm going to start this on, let's say, because I've just created that one now for this month, I'm going to now start doing this every month on the 1st. So you'll notice that I can add items in the future when it comes to direct debits and standing orders, because I'm going to know about it way in advance of the money actually coming out anyway. I can also specify if I want it to end on a particular date, after a particular date, or never. I'll leave that as never. You get similar options as before, so I won't re-go over those. And then lastly, again, exactly the same info. So let's put travel card again, leave it as public transport. Let's go with what I think is the most expensive travel card. Do you know what? It's probably not even that expensive. I bet it's more. Bet you any money it's more than that now.
No, we were looking at them the other day. They're very expensive now.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I'm being too optimistic then. So I'll go ahead and press save. Okay, now what it's done is shown me a schedule. So it's taken me back to the recurring expenses page, and this now shows me the schedule of recurring expenses. So as you add more, you'll just get a list of these appearing here. So we'll see the supplier is public transport. It's going to be created for 121. It's active, so that I know that on the 1st of May that the expense is going to create. Don't know what's happened there. I
Had
think my
a bit of a flicker there, but I think we're okay again now.
bit of a glitch. Yeah, I was just thinking, I was like, is that my eyes? I don't know what's going on. Okay, so yeah, on the 1st of May, and if at any point you do need to edit any of these, you can do that via the pencil icon, or if you want to just stop it and delete it entirely, use the bin icon. So nice and simple, that one. That's it for expenses from my point of view. Katie, have you got anything that I've missed?
Should we touch maybe a little bit on Snap, or do you want to cover that a bit later on with add-ons? So I think that's a really good one to cover because they've got the option for some free ones on there.
Yeah, you might as well. Yeah, go into it now, mate, because it's relevant. So we might as well touch on it.
So Snap is just a really simple receipt scanning app that you can download for your phone. So really helpful if you are out and about and you happen to purchase an expense and you want to capture it then and there. You can simply take a photo of it on your mobile and it will process that receipt and it will appear as an expense in your crunch account for you. So we've got 2 versions of it. The Snap Lite, so that gives you up to 15 free captures per month, or if you really like using it, you have got the option to upgrade to an unlimited version as well. If you want to download it, you can just get it from the Android store or the Apple store, and you can activate it through your crunch account on this page, which Luke is now showing us here.
Yeah. So you just for sort of additional services like, you know, like Kate said, Snap, Trip Catcher, they're actually super handy and can make your life a lot easier, especially if you're out and about and on the go quite a lot. So all you'd need to do is go to Add-Ons, which is this little icon down here in the bottom left, and then you know, you've got a range of different things that you could look at to help boost your business and add, you know, things like, you know, you can even speak to one of our accountants if you really wanted to as well about anything. But yeah, for sort of Snap, Trip Catcher, and anything else, it's worth just exploring that section for those sort of things.
You just have to activate them through this section and then you'll be able to go ahead and snap away.
Yeah.
And you've got the option for some free ones, so nothing harmed, nothing gained.
Yeah, everyone likes something for free, don't they? So if it's there, why not, if it's going to help you out, you know? So yeah, for stuff like that, just go here, check these 2 out, press add, and then it will tell you exactly what it is that you need to do to get those synchronized together. So yeah, that's a very good point. So I think we're pretty good with the expenses now. Let's jump into sales. So how to actually create an invoice and issue it through your Crunch Free account. So the one really handy thing about this is that you no longer have to manually create an invoice, download it, attach it to your own email address, and then send it off that way. You can do all of that just by using your Crunch Free software. So you can create it, you can issue it, you can email it, and then everything's just centralized and housed in this one place. So in order to do that, go to sales, and the first thing you'll need to do, very similarly to expenses, is set up your clients. So these are the people that you're working with. These are, you know, who you're going to be sending your invoices to. So if you go to clients, you'll see here, you've probably got one already set up automatically by default. So to create your own new one, just go to new client in the top right here, and then you need to start entering some info about them. Now, I won't go through all of this. I'll go through the important bits that you do need to include. For anything else, if you're unsure, go onto the Help Center. There is an entire Help Center article about creating new clients on there. So anything that I miss, you will still be able to find info on it. So company name, simple enough. Who is it that you're working with or for? Now, I know it says company name, but it can of course be an individual if you are working with a specific person. So let's go with, I'm going to go with BBC. Why not? It's nice and easy. Default invoice currency, you've got a handful that you could choose from here. So make sure you pick the right one. Payment terms, simply how long you're giving your clients to pay you for your service. You can be as generous as you like, or maybe not so much. It's entirely up to you. All right. So your contact details. Now this one is really important because this is how you're going to send the invoice through your account. So you know, if you are working for a large organization like the BBC and you're perhaps working with different people, different departments, you can add different contacts in. There's no point creating loads of different clients for the same organization. Just create different contacts instead. So let's just say I'm going to be working with John Smith. Make sure the email address that you put in here is their exact address. Telephone and role you can ignore, don't worry about that, that's not really important. You can put it in there if you want, but make sure that you are checking these boxes. So if it's the only contact you've got, by default they'll be the primary, but including email is how you ensure that your invoices go to that person. So make sure that's checked. And again, if you want to add another contact, you can keep doing that and you can do the same thing again. So just bear that in mind. And if you want to remove them, just use the red X as we can see here. I'm happy with that though, so I'm going to move on. Billing address is their trading address. So this is where they operate from, and that's really important to get right. After all, invoices do become legal documents, so you want to make sure that you are billing it to the right place. So I'm gonna, and again, I'm about to be really hypocritical and just make up an address, but don't do that. Make sure that you are entering the correct one. Okay, simple enough. Sales invoice note, I'm not going to go into too much detail about. You could use this to add a personal message such as thank you for your service or something like that. Not essential, so you can just leave it alone if you want to. Include bank details, of course. They need to know which account you want to be paid into. So always make sure this box is checked, and also make sure that you select the correct bank account you want to receive your money into as well. If you've got more than one, of course, this list will just include them all. So set that, and as you can see, it's now attached the banking information to this client for me. Lastly, I'll quickly whiz through late payment reminders. So these can be really helpful for, I guess, one, saving yourself that awkward conversation of having to ask for money that is overdue, and two, it just allows you to automate it. So if I've got an invoice that is due and it's 2 days late, I can set the system to start sending out automatic emails every 2 days after that point as well. So I can either just make it a reminder for myself if I just want to give myself a nudge, or I can do it for both myself and the client that's overdue on payment as well. So that's more or less it when it comes to setting up the client. They're the bare essentials that you have to enter. Katie, you think of anything else?
No, just to say that obviously if you don't want to have a late payment reminder on there or your bank details for any particular reason, you can just untick those boxes as well to leave them off. But yeah, I think you've pretty straightforward, really.
Cool. Nice and easy. I'll set those back up just so that when we create the invoice, it shows. So save client. There you see you've got your client created now. So let's go ahead and create a new invoice. So all you've got to do here is go to the sales and invoices section. And then from here, you've got this button here, new invoice, or you've got this one. It makes no difference. Choose whichever's easier. I'm going to go to new invoice. I suppose it's worth pointing out these filter options as well here. So as you start to build your account, you probably will end up with quite a lot of different invoices. So if you ever wanted to filter out specific ones, whether that's by client, whether it's by a specific invoice number, you know, if you've done a recurring invoice, you know, if you're working on timesheets or whatever it might be, you can also filter those, and by date as well. So they're just nice to know very quickly. So we'll go to new invoice, select your client from this drop down menu here. So we'll go with BBC. As you see, a lot of this stuff's now pre-populated for me because of the way that I'd set up my client just a moment ago. So it's got the address in there, it's picked the currency that I'd set as well. The payment terms are in there that I set really ungenerously. And all I now need to do is just pick the date that I want the invoice to be issued on. So you can either type it, you can use the calendar, or if you are doing it daily, just press today instead. I'm going to skip these two for now because I am conscious of time, but again, there's help center articles online, so make sure that you check those out to find out what they are if you need them at all. Now, when it comes to invoicing line items, this is just the description of your service. So what is it that you're providing? What is it that you're charging them for? Now, press add line item, type in the description of your work, Let's just say something like this. Then put the net amount that you're charging as well. And you'll see, because it knows that my account is VAT registered, it's going to now add VAT on top. If you're not VAT registered as a company, it won't let you add VAT on. So again, it's just the system doing a smart thing, going, hang on, I know you're not VAT registered, therefore I'm not going to allow you to charge VAT on the invoice. So just let the system do the working out for you. And as soon as I press save, it's now done the maths for me. So my service is 2.5 grand. It knows to add 20% VAT, so 500 quid. It's now going to charge the grand total of 3 grand instead. So that's as simple as it is. You can add more lines if you want to. You know, if you are providing different things as a service and you want to list them all, that's fine. And then this amount will just update as you add more line items. If for any reason you need
expenses as well to recharge to the client.
Yeah,
From where we
yeah,
did with the expense earlier, then you'll have that button there, which will bring up your list.
yeah, that's a good point as well. So if you do have a client that you've recharged to, like we did with the supplier earlier, I think actually if I change this now,
you should be able to do it now. Yeah.
Now it lets me add the expense. So it'll only let you add a recharge to somebody that you've set an expense against. So if I go ahead and do that now, from this list, I'm going to pick that. Do I want to include the expense details? Yeah, absolutely. And if I need to add a little description in there and then save it. And there you go. It's actually added that on top for me as well. And it's also worked out the VAT element as well. Now you might be wondering, why is it adding VAT on an expense that doesn't have VAT? That's just normal. If you are recharging something, an expense, even if it doesn't have VAT, it actually becomes part of your service. So therefore you're able to add VAT onto it and charge them VAT because you're providing them with a service. So I'm happy with that. I'll leave that as it is. You can, add notes similarly as before, but I'll leave that out. I'm also going to check the box for bank details, make sure I've selected the right bank account I want to be paid to. Do I want late payment reminders? I'll leave that alone for now. At the bottom, you've got a couple of different options. You can either save it as a draft, which just, you can edit it, you can delete it. It's not a legal document at that point. Drafts you can actually use as quotes or estimates as well, because it's not a legally binding document. You can just give someone a little taste of what you're going to charge them for your service if you want to. If you are happy with it though, and you do want to go ahead, go to preview and issue. And here you'll say sales invoice created. At this point, this is draft. Okay, so you've still got the option to edit it if you want. But let's just say you're happy and actually you do want to go ahead and press on. Use this button here, issue and email. So what this will do is it will generate some basic info about it. Who is it that you're sending it to? So if you've got multiple contacts, you can select them from a pick list. It will just show them all. Email subject, you can customize to whatever you want it to be. This is a dynamic invoice number field, so that will just change as and when you raise more invoices. And then you've got the email content here. So that will, you can customize that or just leave it like that if you wanted to. I'm happy with this though, so all I'm going to do is press send. And it's now confirmed to me the sales invoice is created, it has been emailed, and as we can see, this now shows in our invoice list as outstanding. So this will now show you when you raised it, has it been sent by email, when's the payment due, who's it to, and then you've got the invoice numbers and the payment info amounts as well, the invoice amounts as well. That's it in a nutshell when it comes to invoicing. So nice and straightforward. There really isn't much else to it. I guess the only thing I would say is if you don't need to email it to them for any reason, you might have seen another option that was just issue invoice. So if perhaps you're simply reflecting something that, if you have got your own invoicing system, if you make your own templates and you send that out manually to your client, obviously you don't need to resend the invoice again. So if you are just using this for bookkeeping, just press issue invoice rather than issue an email. It will do exactly the same stuff, but it just means that you are keeping a record of everything, of all of your work as well, and that's really, really important for year-end accounts and things of that nature. That's probably it for invoicing, I think. Casey, have you got anything that you wanted to include?
Yeah, no, you just touched on what I was going to say there with if you're not needing to invoice directly through Crunch. So if you're working with like an agency and you fill in a timesheet, you're still going to need to raise an invoice in Crunch just so you've got the record keeping here so that you can record your client payments against it. So just using that issue option is perfect.
Perfect. Right. Oh, hang on, I've got a question here. So from Lindsay, will the invoice show to the client as having been sent from our personal email or from Crunch? So this will actually show that it's come from Crunch. So it won't be from your own personal email address. So I can't remember, is it, I think it's a no reply, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken, it's a no reply
It is.
email address.
Yeah.
So what it might be worth doing is on the invoice notes section that I mentioned earlier, if you are going to email this through the account, it might be worth perhaps putting a note on the invoice to say, you know, if you have any questions or any concerns or whatever it might be, please contact me on this email address. Okay, and that will actually show on the invoice as well. So they'll have some way to communicate with you if they need to about it as well. That's a very good question. Very, very good question. Okay, I think that's all we've got here. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we'll move on now, lastly, to, I think it was a brief explanation of bank reconciliation, wasn't it, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
So I know we touched on this a moment ago, so you know, for open banking and things, I'm not going to rehash that at all. But bank reconciliation is one of the most important things that you're going to do when you're looking after your own accounts. In short, bank reconciliation helps you verify the data that's in your Crunch account to what's showing up on your business bank account statements, and everything has to be accounted for. This is why it's so important to have something like open banking set up, because then you're ensuring that every single transaction that's on your statement is also then going to be reflected in your Crunch account. What's more is that the account has to be reconciled, like I said, not only to verify that the data is correct, but also so that you can handle you can hand off your data to an accountancy firm so that you can get your year-end accounts prepared. I mean, if your accounts haven't been reconciled and they're not accurate and they haven't been updated, nobody is going to look at those to prepare the year end for you. They just will not touch it, because you know they're legal documents. They have to be uploaded onto Companies House. They have to be uploaded to HMRC. And if there's any inaccuracies in it, believe me, HMRC will come down on you like a ton of bricks. And they're not kind about it, are they, Katie?
They are not, sadly.
They're really not kind about it. So save yourself some trouble, look at open banking, and start, you know, having a look into bank reconciliation. Now, my advice to you, if you're brand new, look to reconcile at least once a month, at the very, very least, if that's all you're going to do, once a month. You know, if it's at the start of the following month or literally the last day of the month, it's totally up to you, but just make sure you're doing it once a month. We are going to have a different masterclass about bank reconciliation as well, by the way, so we'll send you some more details about that after this session. The last point, I believe, is just to give you a pointer on the help center. So in your Crunch account, you do have access to an in-app help center, and that's done in the bottom left. So if you press here, this will open up. Now, it's worth noting that we are in process of actually moving this button. So the only difference here will be that this changes from the bottom left and it will be up in the top right-hand corner instead. The way that the panel expands is exactly the same. So nothing changes other than this little button here moving to the top right over here. That's it. What you can still do with it though, regardless of where the icon is search the entire help center for our articles. So if you need additional help with bank accounts, you know, if you want to know more about reconciliation, as mentioned just a minute ago, all of that's there, and even statement guides and things. You can search for items, so you don't even have to step away from your Crunch account. So everything's there. You know, you can read and do at the same time, which I personally find is really, really important.
Yeah.
you know, the last thing I want to have to do is just search Google for an article, and then I get distracted. I'm very easily distracted. So yeah, it is handy that this is all built in. And then you've got some additional bits and bobs as well. So business guides, news articles, and then you've got our collection of videos. And you've also got some prompts to maybe upgrade your package if you ever wanted Crunch to look after your bookkeeping and your year-end accounts. I think that's more or less it when it comes to the software then. So hopefully you found that really helpful and informative, and it's given you some pointers and tips on how to do things. I think, yeah, the next couple of things that we're going to cover in another webinar are the bank reconciliation, as I mentioned. So keep your eyes peeled for that. So as a short and sweet recap, we've looked at business details and logos. We've added a bank account and talked about open banking. We've had a look at suppliers and recording expenses as well as recurring expenses, how to set up your clients and send your invoices, a short and sweet introduction to bank rec, and then a quick look at the help center. So yeah, I think the info that we'll send out to you afterwards is going to be really helpful. So keep your eyes peeled on that. You'll get a copy of these slides in the recording. There's links on these slide decks as well, so you can just jump straight to these specific things. That will take you to the help center articles. And we've also got some useful resources to keep your eyes open on as well. But that's it, I think, from Katie and I. Katie, have you got anything you wanted to include?
I guess if you're fairly new to Crunch and you want a bit of a step-by-step on how to get everything set up, kind of like we've covered today, in the Help Center we have got a getting started guide, which would be perfect for just walking you through everything. So have a look for that if you want a little bit of a step-by-step to guide you through that. But apart from that, I think we're golden.
Perfect, perfect. All right, well, I do want to say thank you very much for attending today. It's been an absolute pleasure guiding you through this, and I hope you find your experience with Crunch Free everything you expect it to be. And as we say, if you ever need any help, support, like Katie's mentioned, Help Center, and hopefully you do upgrade with us at some point as well.